With 2 drill sites in Western Canada, Surge Energy is a smaller player in the oil and gas industry. So it's been trying to insulate from tariffs by selling its oil before they take effect.
Welcome back. The head of the Canadian province of Ontario is, listen to this, threatening to cut off electricity exports to the United States.
It needs to end. That's why I've been crystal clear. Until these tariffs are off the table, until the threat of tariffs is gone for good, Ontario will not relent.
You know, he put up a smoke screen, he keeps moving the goalposts. Well, the market is speaking loud and clear. The market is going to go downhill faster than the American bobsled team.
With 2 drill sites in Western Canada, Surge Energy may be a smaller player in the oil and gas industry, but it's taking strategic steps to shield itself from the impact of tariffs. By selling its oil before they take effect, Surge is positioning itself to weather the storm. But Canada's energy sector faces a more significant challenge, a staggering $19 billion in annual losses due to tariffs imposed by President Trump. In the wake of Trump's trade war, Ontario's premier is now threatening to cut off electricity exports to the U.S., further escalating tensions. This move comes after Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on most Canadian imports and a 10% levy on energy exports, which has sparked a dramatic shift in Canada's foreign policy and energy export strategies. Curious how this will unfold? Let's dive into how this new energy showdown between the U.S. and Canada is playing out. The impact of Trump's tariffs. On February 1, 2025, President Trump's hard-hitting tariffs began with a 25% tax on most Canadian imports and a 10% energy tariff on all Canadian oil and gas exports. Just hours after these tariffs were announced, Trump remarked that Canada could easily become the 51st U.S. state if it agreed. This sparked a diplomatic uproar between the two nations. The 10% tariff on energy products is particularly damaging. In 2023, Canada exported nearly $100 billion worth of crude oil and energy products to the U.S., representing about 25% of America's total imports from Canada. This sudden tariff hike immediately increased input costs, triggering alarms in Midwestern refineries and causing electricity bills to spike across American households. By April 2025, Canada's goods trade deficit with the world hit a record high of 7.1 billion Canadian dollars, about 5.2 billion USD. The drop in exports to the U.S. has severely impacted Canada's economy, prompting Ottawa to seek new partners for its energy sector. Canada's strategic pivot to Asia and Europe. Under immense pressure, Ottawa made a rapid shift in its investment strategy, redirecting oil exports away from the U.S. toward China and European Union member states. New pipelines and port partnerships in Western Canada are being fast-tracked to accommodate this shift, aiming to reduce dependency on American markets and secure long-term agreements with Asian buyers. As Canada turns to Asia, the central question remains: did Trump ever foresee that his tariff strategy would backfire so spectacularly, sparking such fierce retaliation from his northern neighbor? The oil price shock. The 10% tariff has had a brutal impact on Canada's oil industry. The spread between Western Canadian Select (WCS) and West Texas Intermediate (WTI) prices shows the sharp hit Canada took. In May 2025, WCS was trading at just $52.24 per barrel, while WTI remained at $60.79 per barrel. This difference meant that U.S. buyers could purchase Canadian crude for nearly 14% less than they would pay for their own WTI crude, refining it into high-value products like gasoline and diesel, and selling them globally for a higher price. This price gap benefited U.S. refineries, which bought Canadian oil at a discount, then exported refined products for a tidy profit. In March 2025, Canada exported a record 4.3 million barrels of oil per day to the U.S., which accounted for 60% of U.S. crude imports. However, the tariffs have disrupted this once lucrative relationship, leaving Canada with a smaller share of the profits.
If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way.
Canada's response. pivoting westward. Not content to let the U.S. dominate the energy trade, Canada doubled down on its long-term strategy. The Trans Mountain Expansion (TMX) pipeline was launched in 2019 and officially came online in May 2024, boosting capacity from 300,000 barrels per day to 890,000 barrels. This massive increase in capacity opened up doors to Asian markets that Canada had only dreamed of in the past. By May 2025, China became the largest customer of the TMX pipeline, importing an average of 207,000 barrels per day. This shift has allowed Canada to reclaim some of the lost market share, with exports to other Asian countries like South Korea, Japan, and India also rising by nearly 60% compared to 2024. The struggle to rebuild Canada's energy industry. In response to the tariff blow, Canada has also focused on expanding its liquefied natural gas (LNG) capabilities. The Kitimat LNG project, slated to begin in mid-2025, will be the largest LNG export terminal in Canada's history, capable of exporting 14 million tons per year. This project, along with the wood fiber LNG plant, will secure Canada's foothold in global LNG markets, reducing reliance on U.S. gas exports. However, these ambitious projects come with their own set of challenges. The cost of building new infrastructure and overcoming legal hurdles from environmental groups and Indigenous communities has been staggering. But Canada is determined to proceed, aiming to cement its position as a global energy player. The political fallout, Canada's bold moves. The political fallout from Washington's tariff policies has forced Canada to fast-track energy projects. On June 2, 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney convened a meeting with provincial and territorial premiers to address the urgent need for change. A new process for national interest certification has been introduced, aiming to reduce the lengthy approval timelines for energy projects from 7 to 10 years to just 2 years. Despite environmental concerns and opposition from Indigenous communities, Ottawa is determined to push forward with projects that are seen as vital for the nation's energy future. The goal is to reduce Canada's reliance on U.S. markets and position the country as a more diversified and reliable energy partner for the global market. The future of Canada's energy industry. Canada's strategy to reduce dependence on the U.S. market is clear. By expanding its oil and gas exports to Asia, speeding up LNG projects, and investing in carbon capture technology, Canada is building a more resilient energy industry. The higher investment costs, logistical challenges, and political pushback from environmental groups make the future uncertain. Still, Canada is positioning itself as a potential energy superpower, ready to compete on the global stage. As Trump continues to use tariffs as a bargaining chip, Canada's ability to pivot and adapt will determine whether it can overtake the U.S. as the dominant energy player in the coming years. What do you think? Will Canada successfully navigate these challenges and become a true energy powerhouse? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more updates.